Novel Navigator. Chapter 131, The Commotion. The mercenaries took their positions by the side of the barrier that was facing a forest. Around 30 Blackhearts stood right outside the barrier, right at the spot where they planned to make the hole. "All ready?" Corey asked. He was standing in front of everyone. Behind him, slightly over 20 tanks stood side by side with shields in hand. Over half of them weren't even tanks, but damage dealers that were just muscled and had shields ready. Behind the tanks, there were a large number of fighters standing by, wielding swords, battle axes, and spears. At the rear of the group, a small group of archers and magicians were ready to provide support from a distance. After seeing everyone prepared, Corey turned to the barrier with a wand made out of walnut in hand. The wand was slightly worn from years of use, its tip curving down like a hooked nose. With a wave of his wand, he took control of the barrier and started creating an opening in the shimmering, translucent wall. At first, the opening was barely the size of an apple, then it gradually widened until it was large enough for a person to walk through. It continued growing until it was big enough for several people to pass through at once. The Blackhearts didn't move at first. They just looked at the opening with frowns on their handsome faces. They were certain that there was some kind of trickery behind this choice. On a small hill, hidden from the eyes of the mercenaries, the 5 Blackhearts saw that happen. They spoke with each other in their strange language. A small fight of words happened between the two of them, but ultimately they decided on something. With a loud scream, they again ordered the rest of the Blackhearts. The Blackhearts, by the opening, stepped inside. They knew that this was part of the humans' plans, and they knew they most likely didn't want them to break the barrier as it would lead them to be surrounded. That was the first plan of the Blackhearts. If they focused on a single point in the barrier with their entire army, they would have already been able to break through, but that wouldn't have destroyed the entire barrier. If there was time, they would have preferred destroying the entire barrier, but there was not enough time. They felt something approaching with high speed, someone strong, thus, they had to act quickly and were forced to make a hasty decision. "Stop them!" A shout sounded. The tanks stepped forward and placed their shields in front of them, locking them tightly together to create a makeshift barricade. The Blackhearts screamed and smashed into the shields. They managed to make the tanks take a single step back, but that was all. The opening in the barrier was stuffed. There were nearly 100 Blackhearts waiting outside, unable to enter the town. That's why Corey made the army of mercenaries stay near the opening, so they didn't have the danger of every Blackheart entering the town. It would lead to the same threat of them being eventually surrounded. "NGH." Adam grunted heavily while his shield was shaking from the sheer force of the Blackheart warriors pushing against it. He had to use every bit of his strength to stop himself from being pushed back. If he didn't keep his ground, there would be a big opening in the barricade of shields, which could lead to a devastating breach in their defenses. Adam drew his steel from the scabbard and stabbed the blade through one of the Blackheart's thighs. The Blackheart howled in pain as blood gushed from the wound. He had to somehow make him stop pushing against the shield. It worked for a moment, but then the Blackheart, with pain and anger, grabbed the shield and tried to rip it off Adam's hands. However, Adam's arm was strapped to the shield, tightly secured by the straps. "Shield charge!" Adam screamed and rammed his shield through the Blackheart, sending him flying. He had finished learning the shield charge. After having a huge level up, his strength increased so much that he was able to learn shield charge with relative ease. A new wave of Blackhearts rushed in and tackled straight at the walls. Thump, thump, thump. Rah! The tanks roared and pushed against the Blackhearts, their muscles straining with the effort. Adam suddenly crouched, placed his shield at the Blackheart's chest, and tossed him into the air with all his might. The Blackheart flew over the shield barricade and fell in the middle of the mercenaries. The mercenaries looked at the creature with murderous gazes and stabbed him repeatedly until he stopped moving. The Blackheart let out a final, guttural roar before falling silent. "Not bad." Beside Adam, Arxam acknowledged while stopping the onslaught of the Blackhearts with relative ease. "Thanks," Adam replied, but was instantly attacked by another Blackheart. There wasn't a single moment to breathe. It was a constant battle from start to finish. Digby stood behind Adam, a small smile playing on his lips. He was pretty impressed with the young man's skills as a tank. He had heard all about it from Nuhs and others, but to see it himself was another level of awe-inspiring. The Crimson Hounds never had a proper tank in their ranks, but they had done well without one. However, it was always nice to find one. Digby was certain that in 5 years or so, Adam would join them in battle as their main tank. At that moment, from the midst of the mercenaries, a cold-looking man stepped forward and pushed himself through the mercenaries. He was holding a small dagger and a sigil of shattered shields on the blade. He lifted the dagger over his shoulder and saw Adam standing with his back towards him. The hand holding the dagger started itching. The cold-looking man started sweating profusely. As the back of the S-ranker neared, his throat turned dry. He was hesitating whether to strike or not. He was afraid. Failure meant death, and success meant death. The members of Shattered Shields, who he thought were his friends, forced him to do this to avenge their guild master. He wanted to avenge her, but he didn't want to die either. "If I don't do this, they'll kill me. If I succeed, maybe I can run away." He realized that there was only one thing to do. With gritted teeth, he pushed through the last row of mercenaries and screamed. The dagger came falling down from above. At that moment, a steel sword sliced through his hand, causing the dagger to fall off its hand and clatter to the ground. "Ah!" The cold-looking man let out one gasp of shock. Then, a steel sword sliced through his throat, ending his life instantly. Digby, holding the steel sword, coldly stared at the lifeless body on the ground. He then turned his gaze over to the group of Shattered Shields. "They thought I was that stupid. Since he came to Kuro Island, he has kept an eye on Shattered Shields." With his strong Kiryoku, he could tell that they were very angry at them. He knew they would try something. Then, during this, he noticed that every member of the Shattered Shields was rather far from the front, clumping together as if they were planning something. Bastard! The members of Shattered Shields ignored the fight with the Blackhearts and rushed at Digby as one. Guild Master Valera and other members of the Crimson Hounds joined their Guild Master and clashed swords with the Shattered Shields. The commotion caught the attention of every mercenary. Chapter 132, Through the arms, through the knees, through the neck. The shield barricade showed signs of cracking because of the commotion. Among the tankers, there was one member of Shattered Shields. He heard his friends cry and abandoned his post at the front lines to rush to their aid. That created a sizable opening in the shield wall, allowing the Blackhearts to swarm through and attack the rest of the mercenaries. "No!" Corey shouted, seeing the carnage that ensued. Other tanks tried to mend the opening in the shield wall, but it was too late, and they were forced to unsheath their swords and join the fight. A bloody, sword-screeching fight ensued. It was messy, chaotic, and relentless. All the plans, all the strategies, and all the hopes of a swift victory had been dashed in an instant. The Blackhearts rushed through the opening in the barrier, more and more of them pouring into the town with each passing moment. The mercenaries were going to get overwhelmed at this rate. At that moment, Corey waved his wand in circles and mended the hole in the barrier. The barrier recovered just in time to hold back the oncoming horde of Blackhearts. Half of the Blackhearts stayed outside the barrier, but then they received a screaming order and started attacking the barrier with renewed fury. This was a blessing in disguise. With quick thinking, Corey was able to cut the Blackheart army in half. However, they had to kill the Blackhearts that were currently in the town before the barrier was broken through. Corey looked towards the battlefield with an ugly expression. The Crimson Hounds and the Shattered Shields were going at it. They didn't focus on the Blackhearts as they didn't have any breathing room to do so. Adam wasn't completely aware of what was happening because he was in trouble. He was in the middle of the battlefield, flanked by the Blackhearts and mercenaries. A bloody battle was happening all around him. At that moment, one Blackheart managed to kill a mercenary near him, and his emotionless eyes turned straight towards Adam. With a strange scream, he charged straight at him. Ignoring the fallen corpses, the pools of blood, and the deafening sounds of war, the Blackheart only focused on this one young man. Shield charge! Adam rammed his shield straight at the Blackheart, who only stumbled back one step. Then, the Blackheart kicked the shield aside and punched Adam in the face. The impact reverberated through his face and sent him flying backwards, only stopping once his back crashed against a wall with a loud thud. Arg! Adam coughed and tasted blood in his mouth. The Blackheart walked straight to him, grabbed him by the collar, and lifted him off the ground. It looked like Adam was at the mercy of a merciless beast. Adam stabbed his sword through the Blackheart's waist, but it was of no use, his grip didn't lessen. Stab, stab, stab. He started stabbing with all his might, but the Blackheart's grip remained firm. Then, the Blackheart touched his throat and squeezed until Adam's vision began to blur. The smile grew on Blackheart's face. He was enjoying this. At that moment, he started hearing something as his ears perked up. Ba dump. Ba dump. Slow, yet steady, rhythm of a heartbeat. The Blackheart frowned and lowered his gaze from Adam's face to his chest. With sharp nails, he ripped off his shirt and touched the skin over his heart. With a deep scowl, he started ripping through the flesh, and with bare hands, he created a dark, gaping hole, deep enough to reveal a pulsing heart inside. Adam was screaming. It was unbearably painful, even though the pain was only 1/10 of real life's pain. It was still one of the worst pains he'd felt in a very long time. The Blackheart looked inside, to the heart. The heart was there, but it looked weird. It was half red, half black, pulsating in a way that was both mesmerizing and horrifying. Dirk God feared Tsainanal Holal. The black-hearted creature looked stunned, as if it had realized something unbelievable. Fuck, you! Adam swung his sword and beheaded the creature, its head rolling across the ground before finally coming to a stop. Adam fell back to the ground, his chest bleeding profusely from the wound inflicted by the creature. Quick! He was about to die. He quickly opened his inventory, took out the flask of the rising moon, and gulped it down. Greedily. It was his last flask of the rising moon. As soon as the liquid traveled through his throat, the gaping hole in his chest closed in, the flesh knitted together, and the pain slowly but surely disappeared. Why? Adam touched his chest with an uncomfortable expression. What the hell was that? About a short distance away, the battle between two guilds raged on. The Shattered Shields were outnumbered, but they still put in a valiant effort. They had 2 members at prime mercenary rank, but still, Digby was stronger than both of them and managed to fight against both of them alone. Digby's sword moved like a flash of lightning, and he parried the strikes from both with ease. Tch. Arim, the vice-guild master of Shattered Shields, clicked his tongue in annoyance. He was with Ray, the second prime mercenary of Shattered Shields. Arim and Ray rapidly approached Digby, their weapons clad in their craft, and they then used their skills. Digby moved his sword and parried the strikes from both, then pushed them back with rapid, consecutive thrusts. Arim and Ray struggled and got a few scratches on their arms, shallow but painful. Nonetheless. Then they met again at the center of the town, their weapons clashing with firework like sparks flying in every direction. Arim and Ray pushed forward and continued slashing, cutting, hacking, and stabbing, but Digby moved his sword to interject, blocking their blows with ease. As soon as he finished blocking Arim's strike, his sword immediately appeared in front of Ray's sword, stopping it in its tracks. They didn't have any chance to attack, as Digby was simply too quick. How is he not royal prince? This is madness. Arim thought with an ugly expression. Their swords met with each other and clashed loudly. They repeatedly swung at each other, and even though he was outnumbered, Digby still had the upper hand. Arim's sword was knocked out of his hand. Ray tried to come to help him, but Digby sliced through his waist, through the flesh, through the bone, and finally exited through Ray's back. Arim shot towards his sword in the ground, picked it up, and swung at Digby with a flat, wide arc. It connected with Digby's sword, but again, Digby's strength overwhelmed Arim, knocking the sword from his grasp. The sword flew away and stabbed through the wall of a wooden building. No! Arim paled and tried to summon some of his magic skills, but Digby swiftly cut through his arms, then through his knees, and finally through his neck, ending his life. With a bleeding, gushing neck, Arim fell to the ground, lifeless and cold. Arim! Ray screamed and tried to stand up, but Digby hacked off his head before he could even move. Whew! Digby exhaled, wiping the blood off his blade with the usual, calm look of indifference on his face. At that moment, a sound of horses neighing and galloping could be heard in the distance. Chapter 133, Self-Control. Following the neighing of horses, a group of riders came through the forest and into the valley below. With swords in hand, they slashed through the army of the Blackhearts, and galloped through the barrier as if it were made out of air. While the Blackhearts were unable to cross the barrier, the same didn't apply to the players. A golden-cloaked man led the riders, eyeing the ongoing battle with a sharp gaze. Feeling his gaze and seeing their strongest members die, the shattered shields lost their fighting spirit and slowly lowered their weapons, awkwardly looking around them and seeing the unhappy gazes of everyone around them. The other mercenaries were pretty much done with dealing with the Blackhearts, but they also suffered some losses. Mikhail, Corey rubbed his back and awkwardly smiled. I would bow, but my back is not feeling too great right now. Mikhail removed his helmet. He was a blonde-haired man with ocean blue eyes and foreign features. He was very handsome, like a prince knight from a fairy tale, and had a glorious sword hanging from his belt. He slowly left the saddle of his horse and approached the shattered shields with one hand in the sword hilt. What happened in here? Corey humbly smiled and explained everything, from Amela to the possible motive of the shattered shields attack and the consequences of that. Without the shattered shields, they could have survived through this without as many casualties. It's my fault. A member of the shattered shields kneeled in front of Mikhail, fear on his face. It's all my fault. He was the tank that abandoned his post to help his friends again. He chose to sacrifice himself because he knew that if the fault was put on every member of the shattered shields, they would all die. You're taking the responsibility? Mikhail asked to be sure. Why yes. Very well. Mikhail, with one hand, drew his sword. As soon as the mercenaries saw the sword, they almost salivated. It was one of the rarest swords in the entire world. The sword of the morning sun. It was a mythical ranked sword. Its hilt was gold and white with engravings of sun motifs. The blade was white and gleaming, crafted from the finest celestial steel. The kneeling person lowered his head, closed his eyes, and prepared to meet his fate. In the name of King Moriarty, the ruler of the originals and the first men, I hereby sentence you to death. His friends watched tight-lipped, not daring to say a word, or they would face the same fate. Mikhail swung his sword down. The swing looked perfect, graceful, and final. The white blade cut through the man's neck cleanly and efficiently. The man's head rolled on the ground and came to a quick stop. This death had an honor. It was an honor to get executed by the sword of the morning Sunday. After the execution was done, the rest of the shattered shields were cuffed and taken away. They would be judged and most likely thrown into the Black Keep. While they were dragged away, they begged not to be thrown into the Black Keep, knowing that it wasn't any better than dying. It was a horrendous, terrifying place where prisoners wouldn't get a taste of the sun or fresh air for the rest of their days. It was often used to keep players who had done horrible deeds locked up for eternity. There had been players who didn't care that they were killed, respawned, and did horrible things to the originals until they were caught and killed again. Eventually, the Black Keep was created, and that's where those kinds of people went. You aren't possibly thinking about sending them there, are you? Corey asked with a raised eyebrow. No, Mikhail said, shaking his head. This offense wasn't that serious. They're thinking that since they basically committed treason, they were going to suffer that fate. It's not the case. Where are you sending them? Corey asked. Beyond the wall, Mikhail said. They just wanted to avenge their guild master, so I allow them to keep playing this game, but just not inside the walls, ever again. After the incident was solved, Mikhail and a couple of Imperial Order members left the barrier and slayed the rest of the Blackhearts with ease. As time passed, more and more mercenaries started to return to the town, shocked about what had happened there. In the sky, the black sun blanked the sky in darkness for a little while longer until it slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, allowing the beautiful moon and stars to return to the sky. A large party was held in the town of Kuroshima, celebrating the ending of the gathering and the successful completion of the mission to prevent eternal darkness. The news of Adam destroying the respawn crystal quickly spread throughout the town, and everyone realized that this might be the last gathering ever. It brought smiles, but also a somber realization. With alcohol in their veins, fights ensued, some ending in friendly terms and others not so much. It was a chaotic and emotional night that would be etched into their memories forever. Adam sat on a porch swing, drinking and enjoying the cool night air on his hair and face. I really need to cut my hair, Adam thought as it continued to go in the way of his eyes. He shrugged his shoulders and took another sip of his drink, deciding to wait until everything settled down to finally get a haircut. Yo, why are you sitting here alone? Zahn asked as he came from inside with a new drink in hand. He was about to return to the party, held near the bonfire, but then saw their little genius sitting in the swing, all alone. Thinking, reminiscing. Adam said and took a sip. During these peaceful, cool nights, he couldn't help but remember his past life and all the mistakes he had made along the way. Zahn raised an eyebrow, wondering why he was talking like an old man at such a young age. Before he could ask, Zahn took another sip of his drink and chuckled, realizing that maybe he was just growing wiser beyond his years. Fine, I suppose, but this is a good chance to make connections and new friends. Who knows, you might need it in the future. With that, Zahn returned to the party, completely drunk and almost unable to walk straight. Adam looked at the drink in hand, feeling like it had lost its taste, and put it away. Alice and others must have already returned from New Paradise. If not today, maybe tomorrow, so maybe I should visit the real world for a moment. As he thought that, the swing moved slightly as a person sat beside him, and a thick stench of alcohol hit his nose. Adam turned around, and immediately a hostile gaze appeared in his eyes, but he quickly masked it and looked indifferent like ice. This must be our first time meeting, Calamity said with a grin and offered a handshake. Name's Calamity, I was S-ranker before you. Adam said indifferently and shook the hand. Not very warm, are you? Calamity said with a chuckle. Introvert? You remind me of Arksum, who has the emotional range of a wood plank. I honestly can't imagine him being the sibling of someone as beautiful as Saphira. A weird world we are living in. Adam couldn't care less about his drunken ramblings. He wanted to shove his sword through his throat, but even when he was drunk, he would still be able to destroy him with ease. It took all of his self-control to keep his emotions in check. Chapter 134, Discipline. Calamity enjoyed his drink. It was Jordanian beer brewed in the high mountains of Jordan, a small island in the far left corner of the Blind Sea. A guild, who built their guild headquarters there, brought some of that to the gathering. They also ship it to the mainland and sell it there, fetching a high price due to its rarity and unique flavor. It was a strange drink in a sense, since the drink tasted different depending on who drank it. For Calamity, it tasted like the most delicious drink, which was why Jordanian beer was one of the most addictive drinks in the New World. However, in Adam's case, it tasted like a soda that was left sitting under the sun for an hour and had gone flat. It wasn't bad taste, but not good enough to make him drink it. I heard you found that wretched crystal, Calamity said with a drunken smile. Congratulations. Thank you. Adam answered with a very flat tone. He didn't hide the fact that he wasn't in a mood to talk to him, hoping that he would take the hint and leave him alone soon. However, whether it was because he was ignorant or drunk, Calamity didn't notice the flat tone and just chuckled before drinking again. It must be tough to be an S-ranker, Calamity said. All the expectations. Ah, I also remember when I left the tutorial I joined Death Mercenaries, and those pure-blooded fuckers sure like to bully me. Pure-blooded. Adam seemed to know the strange term. It was a mocking term used to refer to the ones that were aligned with the pro-strong movement. Death Mercenaries were full of them. The strong rule the weak slaved the world was a cruel place for those who did not fit into their narrow definition of strength. Not going to lie, it was wise to go to Dawn Watch. Calamity stood up, then looked at Adam with a grin. You probably wouldn't have survived if you were in my shoes. Adam didn't answer, he just cracked his knuckles and looked at him with a flat, unwavering expression. Calamity chuckled at the expression and then walked off the porch, waving his hand. See you soon, buddy. We'll probably meet on the big battlefield once the war starts. Yeah. Adam cracked his knuckles loudly. See you soon. The drink by his side had lost its taste. He didn't feel like drinking anymore. I'll go tell Digby and others that I'll go log off so they won't wonder where I am. After standing up, he stepped off the porch and walked down the darkly lit town streets. The bonfire gloriously burned in the distance as he made his way towards it. It turned brighter and brighter with each step he took. There were mercenaries everywhere around the bonfire dancing, laughing, and singing around tables playing mad marbles, telling stories, and enjoying drinks. Some had retreated to their inns with their lovers, and others were engaged in heated discussions under the night sky. At that moment, Adam bumped shoulders with someone. He was too occupied trying to find Digby, causing him to accidentally bump into someone. Hey, look where you are going. A sharp-voiced man said, then placed his hand on Adam's shoulder and shoved him back forcefully. Adam stumbled back and nearly fell to the ground, but quickly caught himself before he lost his balance. A group of drunken men looked at him with strangely annoyed gazes. They wore sigils of a scythe slicing through a heart. Necroman Guild. Adam's eyes turned cold. Those were the worst kind of people to bump shoulders with, especially when they were drunk. Apologize, you little shit. Karma again placed his hand on Adam's shoulders and shoved him back. This time, Adam was prepared and was only forced to take a couple of steps back. This small confrontation quickly gathered attention. Some were hoping for Karma to kick the ass of the S-ranker. That would be a sight to see. I am sorry. May I pass? Adam asked and patted the dust off his shoulder, as if he had gotten dirty from Karma's touch. Little shit. Karma raised his hand and slapped Adam across the face. Watch your tone, fucking mercenaryman trash. His friends laughed, the spectators gasped, and more gazes turned in their way. Adam touched his cheek and felt the sting of the slap, but he didn't look like he was in pain. What the fuck are you doing? Zahn came striding across the grass, his face twisted in anger, his voice laced with anger. Just disciplining a little shit. Karma said with a laugh. He thinks that since he is here, he is on equal footing with the rest of us. He ain't. He ain't shit. Calamity enjoyed the show from the sidelines. He was grinning, laughing, and drinking. This was something he expected to happen and hoped for it to happen. It was easy for S-rankers to forget their place. While that title helped a lot, it also made them ignorant. In the end, the new world worked with a strength-based hierarchy. The S-rankers also had to remember their place. Zahn stopped Karma from doing anything and said, the disciplining is left for the guild to do. You wouldn't like that I would discipline you now, would you? It's easier for him to learn this now than later. Karma said with a laugh. If we had met. Under worse circumstances, I would have already killed him. You're pushing it. Zahn said in anger. It's fine. Adam suddenly said and told him to move aside. Zahn, with a frown, stepped aside to let Adam pass. I thank you for the lesson. Adam said, looking at Karma's black, round eyes. It wasn't sarcastic or condescending. He truly meant it. The S-rank title had gotten in his head. He had to admit that, and he forgot the simple fact that he was weak. The hierarchy of strength was the only thing that kept the new world in check. It was needed for the order to be maintained. It's good that you understand, unlike someone else. Karma turned his gaze to Zahn, mockingly. I don't blame you for not knowing, being around losers like them, they didn't teach you properly. Zahn's forehead twisted in anger, veins popping out as he clenched his fists. Smack! A fist connected with Karma's jaw, sending him sprawling to the ground. The beer in his hand spilled all over his new shirt. All eyes landed on Adam, shocked at the sudden violence. Adam mounted Karma and smashed his fist into Karma's face over and over again. The bones broke, the flesh split, and blood spattered everywhere. You may discipline me as much as you want, but don't you fucking dare insult my guild. You fuck. The fist finally came to a stop, covered in blood and shaking from the adrenaline. Karma's face was a mess of bruises and cuts, blood dribbling down from his forehead to the chin. He looked like he was unconscious. Who? Adam breathed heavily, looking at Karma's bloodied face with indifference. You shit. A friend of Karma's finally came back to his senses and kicked Adam off his friend's body. The members of the Necroman guilds were angered, their eyes burning with drunken rage. Chapter 135, Solving Incident. Adam climbed back to his feet with his hand clutching his waist. That single kick must have broken some of his ribs. You fuck! The Necroman guild's members shouted. You'll pay for what you did. I did what exactly? Adam asked with a raised eyebrow. I was just disciplining him. You should know what might happen if you insult a guild, it's his fault for being ignorant. In worse circumstances, I might have killed him for that insult. That response caused a few people to chuckle here and there. He turned Karma's words against him, and he was also completely correct. It was a death sentence to go and just insult a guild like that, especially since Necroman and the Crimson Hounds were of the same tier. The war between them would lead to many deaths. The members of Necroman gritted their teeth and felt troubled. They weren't as drunk as Karma, so they were able to feel somewhat level-headed. It was very dangerous to go and fight the S-ranker, knowing that the shattered shields were just thrown to a prison ship and shipped back to the mainland to get thrown beyond the wall. Without their guild master's approval, they would be risking severe punishment. How did Adam beat an arch-warrior like that? Zahn wondered. It's true that guy was drunk, barely able to stand still, and couldn't use any of the three powers in that state, but still, he should have been easily able to shrug off that punch. Most of the onlookers just thought that Karma was more drunk than they had originally realized, but there was a person sitting by the roof who witnessed it all and knew what happened. Mikhail used a whetstone to sharpen his sword while keeping an eye on the fight. He had a large plate of meat and fish food, with a large cup of meat on the roof beside him. Influence. Mikhail thought with a serious expression. That punch to the jaw was a catalyst for everything. Once that punch landed, Karma's brain was bouncing in his head like a pinball machine, but in ordinary circumstances, that still wouldn't be enough for Adam to do anything afterwards. However, the influence took control of Karma once the punches continued to land. He started thinking that Adam was much stronger and faster than he actually is. Then he was fear-stricken, thinking that he had severely underestimated his opponent. The influence is rarely used in the New World, mostly because almost no one knows how to use it in a fight. It's also because there is Kiryoku, which is easily able to counter it. However, Karma, like an idiot he is, was too drunk to straighten his emotions to use Kiryoku. I am impressed, Adam Palestar of Crimson Hounds. Move out of the way. Necroman pushed aside his guild members and saw Karma bleeding on the ground, still breathing, barely. Necroman was half-dressed, his black cloak trailing behind him. Then, a few of his guild members whispered something in his ear telling their biased understanding of the situation, making Karma look good and Adam seem like the bad guy in the situation. "You attacked my guild member?" Necroman asked, his voice not sounding angry or upset but rather eerily calm and chilling. He had silvery hair with a few greyish threads interwoven throughout, giving him a distinguished and wise appearance that contrasted with his menacing aura. However, he seemed very pale, like he was freezing from the inside, and there were wrinkles forming around his eyes, making it harder for him to properly open his eyes and see clearly. Someone could mistake him for an elderly person, but those who knew him were aware of the truth. He actually wasn't that old, in his early 40s, and had years left before reaching the end of his prime. With the peak prime mercenary rank, he was one of the strongest guild masters of Tier 2. "I did," Adam answered, truthfully and honestly. "Ha, ha." Necroman laughed slowly, which almost sounded fake. Necroman. Adam thought. What an interesting character. "I too, have rebellious spirits in my guild." Necroman said, then laughed. "Ah, I tried to teach them, but either they refuse to learn or they're too stubborn, maybe both." While he was laughing slowly and eerily, a hand touched Adam. Digby arrived, looking level-headed and composed. With a quick nod of acknowledgement, he said, "Necroman, long time no see." "Digby, Digby, Digby." Necroman chuckled. "I am sorry, but I was talking with this young fellow of yours. He assaulted my guild member, YC. I heard what happened." Digby said, hearing the truth from Zan's mouth. "Both were wrong. Your guild member insulted us, and Adam protected our pride, that's all. Pride is a dangerous thing." Necroman said. "That has led to wars before, and it will likely lead to more in the future if not kept in check. Thank you for your guidance." Digby said with a slight bow. "So do insults. It's best to avoid both." "True that." Necroman laughed and looked at Adam. "A couple of people joined my guild recently, maybe friends of yours." "Who?" Adam asked with a frown. "Ramon and Hannibal, they're from your tutorial group, if I am not mistaken." In the end, they followed the same footsteps. Adam sighed and nodded. "I wouldn't say friends, but yes, I do know them. They're very rebellious, haha." Necroman chuckled. "I've had to whip them a couple of times, but they're really slow learners. Like Karma." With a whip-like kick, Necroman kicked Karma in the side, causing him to yell in pain. "Get up." Necroman's voice turned cold. "How long are you planning on sleeping and embarrassing me?" "Ggu." Karma tried to speak, but his teeth were a mess and his lips were swollen and bruised. "Shut up and go get your face fixed up, you look pathetic." Necroman said with an ugly look. Karma nodded shamefully, but then glanced at Adam, and if looks could kill, Adam would've dropped dead on the spot. His friends helped him walk away, he was barely able to stay on 2 feet. "I hope this doesn't become a bigger incident than it has to," Digby said. "Ha ha ha, it's fine." Necroman said. "But I need to pay to fix up his face, which wasn't pretty either way, but I can't leave him like that." "If you can." Digby nodded and tossed him a pouch with enough shine coins to pay for the healing flask. "Appreciated." Necroman caught it and then glanced at Adam. "See you later, S-Ranker. I am interested in what kind of man you'll become in the future." Adam didn't like that glance. It made him feel uneasy, as if he had been trapped in a spider web. That old man was planning something nefarious. "Are you all right?" Digby asked. "Yes." Adam sighed. "I am sorry." "No need to apologize, you did nothing wrong." Digby said his own honest opinion. He was wondering whether Adam was loyal to their guild and whether he was just going to grow stronger in peace and then leave for a stronger guild when it was time. However, this proved that his heart was in the right place, and he was filled with loyalty. It made him happy. Chapter 136, The Old World. The commotion died down, but many hidden eyes saw this as a prelude to something bigger. During the gathering, there had been tension among the 7 ancient guilds and their allies. Nothing had happened yet, but friends, who were part of different factions, cut their ties together, preparing for the inevitable conflict that loomed on the horizon. It was only a matter of time. A slight distance away, hidden behind a corner, Lady Yu observed everything with a blush on her cheeks. Her gaze followed behind the black-haired young man, who returned to his quarters with Digby. So he is Adam Palestar. It made her heart flutter. This was a person that little God wanted her to investigate. If he really has his power, how come he doesn't have the power of holiness? At first, she thought that perhaps little God was wrong, but she didn't dare to think about that any further. It was near blasphemy to think that little God could be wrong. Those with the power of gods at their disposal should also have the power of holiness. However, Adam didn't have it, as if it were completely erased. Weird, I'll have to investigate him more thoroughly. Lady Yu cheekily smiled and vanished like a light in the darkness. The shadows of the night seemed to swallow her whole. The originals usually didn't have any ways of gaining powers similar to the mercenaries, but Lady Yu was different because she was a servant of the gods. They had granted her powers beyond comprehension, the power of holiness. The night turned dark and deep. Within the Crimson Hound's living quarters, many were sleeping, snoring, and muttering in their sleep. Adam was sitting on his bed, the window curtains slightly ajar, letting in a faint sliver of moonlight. He thought about returning to the real world, but it was already late, and everyone must be already asleep. He decided to stay a little longer, enjoying the peacefulness of the night. At that moment, as if someone just snapped his fingers to make him feel sleepy, his eyelids started to feel heavier and heavier, until he eventually drifted off into a deep and nightmarish sleep. Adam found himself in a dark and twisted dreamscape, filled with shadows and eerie whispers. The scenery continued to shift from a dark forest to the back of an ancient castle to a desolate wasteland with no end in sight, and then finally ended at the edge of a cliff overlooking a vast, churning ocean. However, the churning ocean was reddish, as if it were filled to the brim with blood. At that moment, bones began to emerge from the crimson waves, floating eerily towards the edge of the cliff. In that instant, the face of a person also emerged dead, and its flesh started to peel off from its skull in long, thin strips. Where the hell am I? Adam had never seen a dream this vivid before. It was almost like he was there. You're in the old world, a voice said. Adam's first instinct was to turn his head around to find out who said that, but then a figure appeared in front of him. A black-haired, silver-eyed man stood before him, dressed in a flowing, baggy robe that seemed to be made of some kind of fabric he had never seen before. He was just standing there, but for some odd reason, a noise came from his direction. Ba dump, ba dump, ba dump. It sounded like a loud heartbeat, echoing through the old world like a drum in the night. Who? Adam stood up hesitatingly. Name's Palestar, he said, and he pointed his finger around the nightmarish landscape. And this is the old world, a world destroyed so that the new world could be rebuilt from its ashes. Am I dreaming? Adam asked, and then felt a headache, forcing him to grab his head. Of course it is a dream. It can't be anything else. What isn't a dream? Palestar stood by the cliff, looking at the crimson sea. This is the Blind Sea, but back in the old world days, it was known as the Sea of Lost Souls. How could anyone live in here? Adam asked, looking at the drought-filled land and the dry and barren landscape stretching out before him. Different kinds of people lived back then. Palestar said. The originals hadn't yet existed back then. I think the name originals is funny because they are far from being the original inhabitants. Who are you, Then, Adam asked. Who are you, really? He had never seen dreams or nightmares when he was sleeping in the mortal online, not even once during over a decade of being there. Dreams and nightmares were foreign concepts in this world. The dark god of blackened hearts, Palestar, turned to him. That's me. Adam's eyes bulged wide, and then Palestar opened his robes to reveal a hole in his chest with a black, burned heart still beating inside. You didn't die? Adam asked with a squeak. A foolish thought. A god can never truly die. Palestar said and looked around the wretched place. I was the creator of the old world. When it was destroyed, I still didn't die. I was just sealed away. That's why. Adam felt his throat turn dry. If you're resurrected, the old world will come back. Exactly, Palestar said with a chuckle, and he pointed at him. You're a smart fellow. What do you exactly want with me? Adam asked with a frown. I destroyed your soul. So? How? His eyes slowly widened with sudden realization. The curse that was mentioned. Palestar chuckled. I am that curse, per se. And you, Adam, are the vessel. Adam stepped back in shock and turned his gaze down at his chest. He ripped off his shirt and saw a small, intricate symbol etched into his skin. It was a symbol of the black heart, located right above his heart. That's why Blackheart did that. Adam gulped. I also have a black heart. Our hearts fused together. Palestar said. Our lives are bound together. No. Adam gritted his teeth and shouted. I'll just kill myself and get rid of you. You can do that, but I have a feeling you will regret that. Palestar said. You, and the others from that other world, can come back alive as much as you want to. In that sense, all of you are very similar to us and the Chaos beings. Yeah, I can, so I'm not too worried about losing a couple of months of progress as I can get rid of you. Adam said. That's the thing. Palestar laughed. If you die, you'll lose your ability to come back alive. What? Adam frowned. You're lying. Am I? Palestar chuckled. Every player also has their own respawn crystal. It's just very hidden, and it cannot be broken by ordinary means. Only God can do it, haha. That's... Palestar opened his hand and snapped his fingers. A strange, red crystal appeared in his hand and it felt shockingly familiar to Adam, as if he had a deeper connection to it than he could explain. Your respawn crystal. Palestar squeezed the crystal in his hand and destroyed it. Is now gone. You only have one life left, so go ahead and kill yourself. Chapter 137, Ruthless Request. Adam fell down on his knees, looking at the churning crimson sea with his eyes shaking in shock. He didn't want to believe any of it, but after seeing the red respawn crystal, he didn't have any other choice but to believe it. He had a strange connection with the red respawn crystal. Once it was destroyed, he felt like a part of himself had disappeared. I have a task for you. Palestar said and sat on the edge of the cliff, one knee bent and his hand resting on his sword. What is it? Adam asked weakly. I'll leave the task of resurrection to you, Palestar said with a chuckle. My children failed, unfortunately, but I have faith that you'll succeed. Ha ha ha. Adam laughed. You really think I'll resurrect you? I don't, Palestar said, turning to him and smiling. I know you will. Adam frowned and stood up. That's the last thing I'll do in this life. Even if I die, I won't resurrect you, no matter what happens. We'll see about that. Palestar said. It's morning already, so I suppose it is time for you to leave. Adam frowned, and then Palestar snapped his fingers, the surroundings disappearing quickly. Wait! Adam shouted and quickly asked. Who is really in control of the body? You or me? Is that why you are so confident? The body, mind, and everything between are yours. Palestar said with his arms behind his back. I am just a passenger. I can't see, feel, hear, or do anything with your body. I am sealed in here, in the fake old world. Adam stayed closed as he slowly vanished from the nightmarish world. He didn't know whether he was lying or not, but he had a hunch that he was speaking the truth. However, he wondered why he was so confident that he would betray humanity to resurrect him. It's something he would never forgive himself for. Fuck. Adam clicked his tongue and then remembered one thing. Calamity must have been a vessel of Palestar in the past. After my death, did he resurrect him? How did the world end up after my death? Did Star faction win or lose? So many questions. Ah! Adam slammed his eyes open and felt the warmth of the sun on his face, the rays filtering through the window. It was morning, and he was still sitting in the same position as before he fell asleep. He unbuttoned his shirt, then tugged his shirt down just enough to see his chest. The black heart symbol was still there. This confirmed that it wasn't a dream after all. Damn it! He buttoned his shirt, moved to the edge of the bed, and stood up, feeling the weight of the day on his shoulders. 2 levels in exchange for a curse. Adam shook his head, feeling idiotic for going for the respawn crystal. However, there was no way he would have known it was something Calamity never mentioned, and it wasn't a surprise. If anyone had found out that he was harboring an evil god in his heart, everyone would have gone after him in an instant. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Come in. Zahn opened the door, and his hair was disheveled. He had a sleepy look on his face. He was definitely hungover. Jan, we are leaving. Zahn said and rubbed his eyes. The ship's ready by the dock. All right. Adam picked up his backpack and checked the time on his timepiece. The time moved in that nightmarish place differently. It was already 3 hours past dawn. After leaving the room, everyone was already gathered downstairs, and after Adam and Zahn arrived, they bid farewell to the town of Kuroshima and then walked straight to the harbor. All the buildings were being emptied, and servants were doing final cleanups while the mercenaries were heading to the harbor. The ships continued to leave the docks, one by one. They soon arrived by the dock. It was packed to the brim, so they had to squeeze through, making their way towards the ships. 5 minutes later, they finally reached the gangplank of their ship and made their way up, soon arriving at the deck of their crimson-sailed ship. The hull was fixed, somewhat. It was enough for the ship to sail back to the mainland, but they definitely had to pay for proper fixes there. A couple of days wasn't enough to repair all the damage that had been done during the fight. Let's get the ship ready and leave as soon as possible. Digby shouted. Adam leaned on the same railing from where he fell to the ocean and looked out at the horizon with a distant expression. A black-sailed ship was docked in the harbor, surrounded by ships of all shapes and sizes. The black-sailed ship had a flag of a siege slicing through the heart. It was Necroman. Guild's ship. Hurry up and pull the anchor. Necroman barked orders. The wind was quite good at the moment, and he wanted to take full advantage of it before it was too late. Be boss, here. Karma, with a bruised face, handed him the drink he had requested. His face was still bruised, but it looked much better than it did yesterday. Necroman took the drink from him and drank it all in one go. Karma humbly lowered his head, but his eyes were heading in the direction of the crimson sailed ship. He was boiling with anger. A mercenaryman trash humiliated him in front of the entire mercenary community. It was the biggest humiliation he had ever received. His nickname had become Swollen Lip Karma. He wished to go to that ship and rip off Adam's head and put it on the front of his ship. The deck is dirty, where the hell are those two? Necroman asked with a loud shout. The hatch of the lower decks opened up, and 2 young men came with a floor scrubbing brush and a bucket full of dirty water. Right away, boss. Ramon started scrubbing the dirt off the deck, while Hannibal started mopping up the dirty water. You're always late, aren't you? Necroman asked and tugged Ramon by the hair, dragging him down to the deck. Can't you think by yourself? Or do you need me to hold your hand through everything? And no, boss. Ramon answered through gritted teeth while having his face on the dirt. Hannibal silently kept mopping, tight-lipped, and continued to look at the deck within emotionless gaze. Look there. Necroman lifted his head and made him face a certain crimson-sailed ship some distance away. A friend of yours is doing much better than you. Because he is better than you. You're trash. Ramon's eyes shook, slightly brimming with tears, and he was somewhat able to see the distant outline of Adam. Not long ago, they were in the same tutorial group, but in just a couple of months, their lives became so much different. You want to change places with him, don't you? Necroman asked. And no. Ramon weakly replied. I am happy here. Liar. Necroman slammed his head on the deck, and blood began to trickle down his face. Then he pulled the head back and made Ramon look directly at him. Strength can only be achieved through pain. Necroman said with a grin. Do you want strength? Why yes. I am giving you a mission, Necroman said. I'll give you a freedom to enter the dungeon. But you must bring his head to me. Whose? Ramon asked, hope filling up in his eyes. He had dreamed of returning to the dungeon. It was 100 times better than staying in the new karma. Adam's, of course. Necroman said. Ramon's eyes shook. How can I do that? Become strong through pain. Necroman said. What? Are you saying that you cannot do it? Ramon gritted his teeth. This request was ruthless. He would have to become stronger than the S-ranker recruit. They came from the same tutorial group, but Ramon had to somehow surpass him. B-ranker versus S-ranker. I'll do it. Ramon said deviantly. I'll kill him. I'll do everything in my power to kill him. Good. Necroman grinned and let go of his hair. Now, start cleaning up, trash. Chapter 138, The Mad Pirates. By Kuroshima's cliff, overlooking the dock and the surrounding waters, Zephyr sat on the grass and watched the ships leave with the tide. There were only a couple of ships left, even his own guild's ships had already departed. He ordered them to leave without him. Zephyr hung his head low and closed his eyes, trying to hold back the tears. A few tears escaped down his cheeks. So, they're dead. He covered his eyes and wept silently. The wind howled mournfully around him, carrying the faint scent of salt and seaweed. His shoulders shook with each sob. To anyone who knew, it would be a shock to see him crying. He was a stoic, reserved man who rarely showed his emotions. Zephyr, the guild master of Zestruction, was known for his unwavering strength and composure in the face of adversity. He wasn't known as a man of many emotions. He was very honest and would speak the harshest truths without hesitation, but seeing him cry was a rare sight indeed. He wiped the tears off his cheeks, then stood up with a mournful expression. His body shook with silent sobs as he tried to hold back the flood of emotions that threatened to consume him. Then, his fists clenched into tight balls of rage. Arg! Zephyr let out a scream of anguish, and the ground cracked underneath him. The trees started swaying heavily as if they had turned alive, threatening to topple over. The wind picked up as if the whole island was suddenly in the center of a massive hurricane. Crack! The ground exploded, and a dust shockwave swept across the land, crushing the trees and leaving a massive crater in its wake. Ha! Ha! Zephyr breathed heavily after venting some of his emotions. He stayed on the island to do exactly this. He doubted he would be able to contain his emotions during the ship trip back to the mainland and might destroy the ship in a fit of rage. While his guild members participated in the gathering, Zephyr spent his days back in the real world. He found out something that saddened him greatly. That's how you died, by the dark plague. Zephyr looked up at the sky and regretted his choices that led him here. Selfishness, greed, and lust, three main things that cost him his family. I had a hunch, but he is really your son, Arthur. Within the ship of the mad pirates. Click, tick, squeak, and click. A hatch snapped open, and Iman, with a lamp in hand, descended a short wooden ladder. The air was moist and dusty, with rats scurrying about between the crates of stolen treasures. Iman placed the lamp ahead of him and walked forward to the end of the level, then opened a door at the end of that and entered the dark brig. The only source of light came from a small hole in the ceiling that was dripping water onto the wood floor. The brig was otherwise empty, except there was a dirty-looking young man shackled to a wall inside a small cell with rusty bars. The young man's glasses were lying broken on the ground, and his brown hair was dirty and matted. He was barely awake, his eyes closing and opening slowly, his face pale and bruised. I am honestly surprised. Iman picked up a chair and sat on it while facing the young man. How come you didn't log off and quit already? Ack. Seth had a hard time talking because he was so thirsty. Ever since sneaking inside the mad pirate's ship, he hadn't had access to food or water. It's time for you to speak. Iman said and placed the lamp in front of the cell, letting the light reach Seth. I will ask you again, why? Because. Seth coughed. The real world is not any better. Really? Iman looked around the dirty cell and chuckled. I have a hard time believing that. You haven't eaten and drank in days. Hope, tea, that's all I have. Seth said and licked his dry lips. My mom, dad, brother are all hoping that I'll pull through and become rich. A father and mother put you through this? Iman asked with a chuckle. Isn't it their duty to provide for and protect their children? This world is not a kind place. They can't. Seth said with a hoarse cough. They were in an accident. They can't work anymore. We lost everything. We are poor and hungry every day. I don't want to return to that. Wait. Iman raised a finger and asked. Have you logged off ever since you left the tutorial? Seth shook his head and lowered his head. Ha ha ha. Iman laughed and shook his head. You're destroying your body for your family? What if you fail? What if you'll be locked in this brig for the rest of your life? I can't fail. Seth bit his lip, tears running down his cheeks. I don't want to fail. Ahaha. Iman's laugh slowly died down, and his eyes had a sympathetic look. Believe it or not, our situations are somewhat similar. Seth barely managed to lift his head, his eyes showing that he quite didn't believe that. Iman was a popular pirate captain with treasures beyond imagination, while Seth was just a lowly mercenaryman with no future in sight. I also don't have a future. Iman said with a sigh. It's like my whole life was predetermined. I hate it. I am my own person, but he thinks he can control me. He. Seth frowned, wondering who Iman was referring to. Iman shook his head and pulled out a bundle of rattling keys from his pocket, then opened the cell and tossed it over to Seth. Seth looked at the keys in confusion and then back at Iman. Will you do anything for power and money? Iman asked. Seth looked at the keys, then back at Iman and uttered his words. Why yes. Anything. I can give you that. Iman entered the cell, then crouched in front of the malnourished teenager. I can give you that, but it comes at a price. What is it? Seth asked fearfully, but his own desires were clouding his judgment. He didn't want to see his mother, father, and brother suffering anymore. They were all trusting him. He could still remember their smiles and their thrilled expressions after he revealed that he had become a mercenary. They were so happy. However, they didn't have any idea that the tutorial was the easy part. The new world wasn't made for the weak. I am not telling you that, yet. Iman said with a smile. That day will come, though. It might happen in a month, in a year, in 5 years, or even in 10 years, but you're not leaving me until that price is paid, do you understand? I understand. Seth said and lowered his head in a bow. I am yours to command. Captain. Take off the shackles. Iman said, then stepped off the cell. Then join me on the deck. I'll start your training, Seth of the Mad Pirates. Seth quickly took a hold of the keys and started removing the shackles while tears ran down his cheeks. It was very painful, but he felt a sense of relief and freedom as the shackles fell away. As soon as the shackles fell off his limbs and onto the ground, he stood up, his legs shaking and weak from the days of being bound. Wait, he said to start the training. Seth's expression paled even further. That meant that Iman hadn't allowed him to gain his strength back yet. He would have to endure more pain and suffering before he could rest. Whether it was food or water, he couldn't get any of them before he earned them. Fine. Seth gritted his teeth and stepped out of the cell. Bring it on. Chapter 139, The Birthday Party. A few days later. A virtual pod's covering lid slowly opened, with smoke billowing out. The smoke slowly dissipated into the room, revealing a figure lying inside the pod. Adam slowly opened his eyes, then sat up and climbed out of the pod. He had to take a moment to stabilize himself, otherwise, he would have fallen. Oh, God, what a headache! Adam touched his head. It felt like a hammer was knocking him on the head. After departing from Kuro Island, the ship took them to the mainland, where they rented an inn in the driftwood. They planned to take a wagon to take them to Dawnwatch tomorrow. Thus, he planned to now take a day to rest in the real world and catch up with News and his family. Hira, Adam said. Yes. The feminine robotic voice responded. Has my family arrived yet? They have, but they are currently about to leave. Why? Adam asked. A birthday party. The whole neighborhood was invited to Nicola Leckerman's 70th birthday party. Oh. Adam said, not really recognizing that person. Did they ever look for me? They did. A young woman with long brown hair came to look for you daily. She seemed disappointed after visiting your room. I guess the fake virtual pod trick worked. Adam sighed in relief and asked. Did Sarah want me to go to the birthday party? She has been mad at the fact that you aren't awake. Apparently, it looks disrespectful to miss something like this when everyone else is participating. Sigh. Adam pinched his forehead and asked. Do you know if there's any headache medicine in the room? My head is killing me. Take this. A small opening appeared in the wall. There was a syringe inside with a strange blue liquid. What's this? Adam asked with a frown and took the syringe. Kong added some extra stuff, it seems. It'll cure your headache. Thanks. Adam said and stabbed the syringe into his muscle, then pumped the liquid into his bloodstream. It was like magic. A feeling of weightlessness washed over him. Adam let out a relieved smile and then called out for the elevator, entered, and returned back to his room. There, the virtual pod was still closed with a clouded lid. With the press of a button, he opened the lid. However, he didn't climb inside and instead changed his clothes to more proper ones. After all, he was going to the birthday party. After putting new clothes on, he left the room and walked downstairs. There, Sarah and Alice were well dressed, about to put their shoes on. Ah! Alice noticed him first, and a smile broke on her face. Adam! TCH, about time. Sarah placed her hands on her waist and said, I was starting to think that you were planning to live inside that thing. John came from the kitchen in a hurry and nodded at Adam, then noticed that he was already pretty well dressed, good enough for a birthday party. Ah, Adam, we were about to go to Nicola Leckerman's birthday party. I am not sure if you know him, but it would be good for you to come as well. Please come. Alice asked with her round, puppy eyes. Sure. Adam nodded. He most likely doesn't know anyone from that birthday party, but he didn't mind visiting. After putting on their coats and shoes, they left the house, and instead of taking the car, they walked for a couple hundred meters until they arrived at the biggest yard in the whole neighborhood. With his long life, Nikola Leckerman had gained a sizable fortune for himself. This neighborhood wasn't the fanciest, but it was peaceful, and it was where he liked to spend his retirement days. The yard, the backyard, and inside the house were packed to the brim with guests. The whole neighborhood was invited, and even some of his close friends' families were there to celebrate with him. "I am going to deliver the gift," Sarah said and entered the house, and before delivering the gift, she met some of her friends and started talking with them. John, on the other hand, went to the backyard where a barbecue was already being set up by some of the men of the families and joined them, grilling some burgers and hot dogs. "What should we do, Adam?" Alice asked. She was pretty shy and nervous, as she didn't really know anyone at the party either. "Let's just go get some cake," Adam said as he led the way towards the dessert table. There was a large cake with colorful frosting and sprinkles on top. He cut a small piece for himself and then another one for Alice before placing them both on a glass plate that was shaped like an 8-petaled flower. Alice smiled and thanked him before picking up her plate and following him to find a place to sit. They found a not-so-cozy spot in the corner of the living room. The house was so loud and full that it was a miracle that they even found a spot. They both had a small spoon and ate their dessert in silence while looking around the birthday party. It was so chaotic and loud that they could barely hear their own thoughts. "Were you having fun?" Alice asked, but her words got drowned out by the loud voices around them. "What?" Adam asked back with a shout, he couldn't really hear. "Did you have fun?" Alice asked again, this time with a shout. "Yeah, I suppose." Adam shouted back and asked. "Did you in the new paradise?" Alice nodded and took another bite of the cake. "We went on a beach, then a party festival, a native hot spring, and then a walk through the underwater tunnel." The underwater tunnel was the most popular tourist attraction in the new paradise. The tunnel allowed them to walk on the bottom of the ocean floor and see all the marine life up close. The tunnel was made out of glass, but not just any glass. It was made out of special reinforced glass that was able to withstand the immense pressure of the ocean depths. It was one of the most beautiful things Alice had ever witnessed. They even came across a gigantic blue whale swimming gracefully through the crystal clear water. Its mouth was so huge that it would have been able to swallow the tunnel whole. Yet, while the tourist panicked, the workers there looked very calm and collected. They had complete faith in the tunnel. Adam nodded, even though he couldn't really hear the last parts, but still smiled and ate the cake. The smell of the roasted barbecue wafted from the backyard, so some of the guests moved there, and the living room turned emptier. "I am going to go find Mom. She wanted me to meet her friends," Alice said, then took the glass plate to the kitchen before heading to the backyard. Adam finished up the plate of cake and put it on the small table beside him. He was now sitting there, all alone, surrounded by strangers. His former self would be terrified as he was a pretty introvert many years ago. However, after years in the new world, he shed his old insecurities and gained confidence in social situations. Adam stood up, planning to go talk to some of the guests since there wasn't much else to do. However, at that moment, a young woman with long black hair came to the living room and seemed lost. She was very beautiful, with an innocent gaze in her eyes. She was truly gorgeous, and many younger men in the party looked at her with admiration and desire. When she turned her gaze to Adam, her eyes had a look of recognition and surprise. "Adam," she smiled and approached him, thrilled to finally find someone she knew very well. However, Adam's face paled, and his fists clenched into tight balls of anger. Amelia. Chapter 140, The Old Friends. Amelia smiled sweetly and approached her longtime childhood friend from across the crowded room. She and her family weren't living in this neighborhood, but their family had been friends with the Leckerman family for generations, so they were also invited to the birthday party. Adam loosened his clenched fists and forced a smile as he prepared to greet her. "How are you doing?" Amelia asked. "We haven't seen since, when?" "The school reunion a few years back," Adam said. While it was a few years for Amelia, it had only been a few months for Adam. They traveled to the Black Sea, the most treacherous sea in the New World, and while Adam didn't want to do it, others convinced him to go there. The loudest voice was Amelia. She insisted that it was necessary to ensure the Star faction's victory, and Adam listened to her as she was the advisor of the guild. Reluctantly, he agreed to set sail for the dangerous waters, which ended up being the decision that ultimately led to his death. "Ah, it's been already so long." Amelia smiled with nostalgia. "I hope you've been doing good." "I am doing all right," Adam said formally. His tone made it clear for Amelia that he was treating her like a stranger. It was very odd to her, as during the school days, he was quite warm to her, because she believed that he had a crush on her. Amelia's brows slightly tightened, and she asked, "What are you up to these days?" "Nothing much," Adam replied. "Is that so?" Amelia sat down beside him, using the seat that Alice used just moments prior. "I heard that you've been playing that game." "That game?" Adam looked at her briefly and kept his sentences short. He had a hunch what Amelia was after and was waiting for his hunch to come true. "Mortal Online," Amelia said with a smile. "Our school group is still active and rumors about us spread there quickly. I heard that you've been playing that game from them." "A lie," Adam thought. "I am not close to any of them. It would be impossible for them to know what I am up to unless someone from my family told them, which is unlikely. First of all, Sarah is not proud of the fact that I am playing that game. She is old-fashioned, and she would rather have me be a shop clerk for the rest of my life. While being mercenary in Mortal Online is something to be proud of, she doesn't think the same. John is not a gossiping type, and I don't need to worry about Alice spreading those kinds of rumors. Amelia just wants me to admit that I am playing that game because of one reason." "Yeah, I've been playing it recently," Adam said with a nod. "Why?" Amelia smiled and clapped her hands. "So am I. I graduated from the tutorial around 1 year ago, and I had been addicted to it ever since." "Oh, what guild did you join?" Adam asked nonchalantly while knowing the answer. "The Moonlit Guardians," Amelia responded with a smile. "They're in control of the Chumash village that is around a day trip away from Dawnwatch." "I see," Adam nodded. "Is that what tier of a guild?" "4, Amelia said with slight hints of embarrassment in her voice. "With my D-rank score, it was the safest place for me to go." Adam nodded. "By the way." Amelia turned to him with a smile and curious gaze. "Here it comes. I heard some rumors in the New World," Amelia said and fidgeted with her clear, black hair. "My guildmates can't stop talking about it. There's apparently a new S-ranker, and his name is Adam Palestar." Adam nodded and chuckled. "A coincidence? I've been mistaken for him too many times." "Is that so?" Amelia's gaze turned suspicious. "Weird. I saw a picture of him, and he does look like you." She came here prepared. Adam scratched the back of his head and sighed in resignation. "All right, you got me. That's me." "Ah!" Amelia happily exclaimed. "I knew it. I would appreciate it if you don't go around telling everyone, though." "I understand," Amelia said and playfully did a zipping motion across her lips. "I'll be on my way." Adam stood up from the chair. "I came to this party to just show my face, and now that I have done that—" "Ah, wait." Amelia stood up and touched his hand intimately. "I'd like us to meet in the New World, maybe go for a coffee." Adam looked at her and took his hand away. "No need for that. I wouldn't want you to travel to Donwatch for just coffee. Ah, no worries, Amelia smiled cheekily. I am already in Donwatch, doing some business for my guild. Let me treat you to a lunch. She was really prepared. Adam thought. She knew that I was part of Crimson Hounds, which is located in Donwatch, so she came there to meet me. She most likely came to this birthday party expecting me to be here. If I wasn't, she would have most likely sought me out in Donwatch. Ah, the thing is. Adam scratched his head. I am currently in Driftwood. It takes me about a day to return to Donwatch. That's completely fine, I'll have to spend a few days in Donwatch either way. Amelia said. Really insisting. It even took Adam by surprise, even though he had known him for such a long time. She is very desperate. Adam had a few guesses about why. It's because I am S-ranker. In the past life, I was only C-ranker, and the first time she showed signs of wanting to be part of my party was when I started making a name for myself as a surprisingly talented individual. She is attracted to my current status as S-ranker. She doesn't want to miss this chance to join forces with someone who could reach the top of the new world. She believes that my potential success could elevate her own status in society. In the end, she did betray me for Calamity. Her loyalty is never genuine, she will just switch sides when she has milked everything she could. I'll be busy for the next couple of days. I just returned from the gathering, so I am sorry, but I have to pass. Adam said, then left the party without looking back. Amelia stood behind, stun-locked expression on her beautiful face. She had never been rejected so bluntly before. TCH. She clicked her tongue with an ugly expression and started biting her nail. What's with that arrogance? Now that he has become S-ranker, he has completely forgotten about me? I thought this would be easy, that's why I came to this fucking party in the first place. Does he already have some bitch that has tricked him into liking her? What a weak-minded loser. All the men are the same. Amelia's mind anxiously ran. She didn't want to miss this opportunity. When she first heard the name Adam Palestar from her guild mates, she thought it couldn't possibly be him, the nerdy-looking young man from the high school. It was impossible. However, after seeing the picture, it was clear as day. Think, Amelia, think. Ah, Adam. At that moment, a sweet-sounding voice came. Amelia turned to and saw a sweet-looking, round-eyed young woman looking around in confusion. Alice, right. Amelia's cold look changed, and she was smiling again. Who are you? Alice asked and looked at the empty chairs. Do you know where the person that was sitting here has gone? My name's Amelia, Adam's childhood friend. Amelia offered a handshake. Oh. Alice looked at the hand and shyly shook it. Adam just left. Amelia looked at the door. I guess the party wasn't to his liking. Oh. Alice pouted and wondered whether she should also leave. She wasn't that interested in this party. At that moment, Amelia wrapped her arm around Alice's arm and said, I heard a lot about you from Adam. You have? Alice asked in surprise. Yup. Amelia giggled and said. I am alone here as well, my parents went somewhere. If you don't mind, want to hang out together? All right. Alice nodded with a shy smile.